And welcome back to another exciting video. These are my first pet ants. These are green weaver ants from North Queensland, Australia. They are a tropical species that lives in rainforests throughout the world. You can also find a similar species in Asia and Africa, but these ones with the green head and green little bottom are the Australian version. I've been keeping these girls for about 100 days now, so I thought I'd do a little video on them. They are super cool little ants. Check them out. So I'm going to show you the enclosures that I have set up for them and what I've been keeping them in for the last 100 days. I am a novice to keeping ants, so everything in this video is just what I've experienced so far. Around about 100 days, we have this huge ant hatch out. I guess it's called hatching out. She is a major, which is about 2 to 3 times the size of the normal workers. Once they start hatching out, they are the ones that will help move the queen into the new nest. And this is the first nest they started out in. It consists of 2 test tubes filled with water at one end for humidity and a mini outworld. Very simple setup. And if you open the lid, there they all are hanging out at the opening, protecting the queen. So the queen is safe under the red perspex, somewhere in here, just underneath the heat cord. So under the perspex, there is a fine web. In the wild, they use plants to do this sort of webbing, but we're using a test tube to control the humidity better. So this is roughly what is inside the test tube. Just picture a queen and workers. So there she is there, just above the heat cord. A very, very simple setup, but you want to allow at least 20 to 30 workers before you move them out of a setup like this. It is heated with a heat cord, and I've got the whole setup inside another glass enclosure to keep the humidity and the temperature up. And there is a mini bottle of gin, because every little ant wants a mini bottle of gin. There it is there. Bless them. So that is the basic setup that we've got them in. So once they get about 40 plus workers, you want to move them into a bigger enclosure. So I have a modified Exoterra enclosure up here. This is the next nest. Same sort of setup. We've just got water and honey. So these are little ant feeders that you can purchase. There's the water, there's the honey, obviously. It's not urine, it's honey. Around day 5, they started to move their larvae to the top of the enclosure, which was very strange as I couldn't see any of the larger leaves webbed together, which they should be doing. Those little white things they are carrying are birthed baby ants. As I was following them around, I've discovered a gap in the mesh where they were taking them. So I couldn't figure out what they were actually just wandering around aimlessly with their babies. So if you look up here, there is a tiny gap underneath the mesh, and they are actually using their little white babies to spread silk to block that gap off. And that will keep the humidity and the temperature in because it's right underneath the light. Yeah, little sneaky buggers. That is a tiny gap, just big enough for one worker ant. And if we have a close up here, you can actually see the webbing that they produced. There we go. Look at that webbing. They use that to keep the humidity in and the temperature, see it's right underneath the light, and to protect them from any predators or other ants that could potentially kill their babies and offspring. The only problem with this is the queen is not going to fit in that little gap. The queen is about 3 to 4 times the size of any of the worker ants, and that gap is just big enough for one worker to get through. So we have a small problem right now. And here is the queen. This is the day after. She is sitting on the test tube in the little mini outworld, which is in the main outworld on the floor. They are going to entice her to drag her up into that crack. Oh, this is not going to end well. This is the next day. They have managed to drag her on top of the outworld. So you can see them pulling and pushing. They don't hurt the queen. And if you look to the right, that little tiny worker is pulling that leaf away, out of the way, so that they've actually got room to drag the queen. She is not impressed, by the way. This was a little bit horrifying to watch because if she drops, she can actually die. And without the queen, there are no more worker ants, and that is the end of the colony. A few hours later, she is actually being dragged up the side of the enclosure. Horrifying to watch. She is very large, It's like trying to carry a sack of potatoes backwards up a flight of stairs. Yeah, it is not a great thing. These little ants really need more major workers to actually help them, but they're doing it on their own. A few hours later, she has dropped a few times now. She is still alive. She might potentially have brain damage. It was at this point that I kind of panicked and I added a test tube up the top, hoping that when they realise she won't fit through the gap, she'll actually end up in the test tube and they can web that up. But unfortunately, they are not that smart. And hours later of dragging the poor queen on every angle, and again her dropping several times, again and again, she kind of looks like she has lipstick at this point. Look at the pretty lady lips. It could be blood from her mouth. It's not blood, it's, I don't know, ant lipstick. I did add a few more branches, hoping that they would move her onto the branches and it would be easier, but ignored the branches, which was a bit of a fail. She's so close on dropping again, lipstick and all. And this went on for hours. Almost overnight, they dragged her up, she fell down. They dragged her up, she fell down. Driving me crazy watching it. And then just like that, whoosh, she was in the black pipe. What is that black pipe, you may be asking yourself? Well, when I took the test tube out, I added a black pipe super glued to a magnet on the front of the glass. Yes, the queen is inside that pipe. The small problem with this is when I open the door, like I am now, we have ants everywhere. It is on a magnet, so I potentially can move it to one of the other sides, but it was the best thing I could do while the queen was getting dropped about 10 times to stop her from getting dropped, obviously. There are the ants up there with the larvae and the eggs. She is inside this tube. They have managed to web it up perfectly. So they've webbed up the whole area apart from a little tiny hole big enough for the workers to go through, but the queen can't get out. I'm guessing if she was raging and she wanted to charge out, she could, but the workers are the ones that look after the queen. So now every time I open it, we have ants going berserk. There they are, lovely little things. This is what the enclosure currently is. I have the water and I have the honey down the bottom. All the workers and the larvae are up the top under the light, and the queen and workers are in the tube. Hopefully they will be okay. Hopefully they will decide that they want to move to one of the bigger leafed plants in the enclosure as well. But at the moment, they seem quite content with where she is. This is the side view. You can kind of just make up where the big leaves are and that in there. It's only a small enclosure, but eventually I want to put them into a bigger enclosure once their numbers build up. Anyway, if you like this video, click the thumbs up so I know, and I'll do more exciting ant videos, and we will see you in the next exciting ant video. Hoorah!